I have a question though. Have you ever been to a conference when you've prepared your slides and your presentation and you realize that somebody gave it pretty much in toto before you? Yeah. Okay, well that's happened to me today. Because Tina this morning discussed a lot of things that I was going to mention in my slides, so I've decided to jump over my slides a little bit and talk a little bit about politics. I think that in the context of where I sit, it's a European setting. It's the European Union plus countries around the European Union, summing some 39 in total. And essentially, what I would like to say is three things, and then I'll come to one slide in my presentation. The first one is that I'm not sure that I've observed in 35 years such an alignment between system perspective, system thinking, and policy thinking at the interface between science and policy. So science bringing systems thinking and that being translated into policy thinking, which has a systemic characteristic to it. I think it's unprecedented in the European Union. And I say at the interface because it's an important dimension that actually what system thinking is helping to do is to help people understand how to frame policies in a systemic way. We're still some way from being able to design policies that reflect that systemic thinking and translate into actions that can result in systemic change. But it's going. And that's my second point. The current European policy cycle is changing. From now until the 1st of November, we start with a new 5 years. And if you read policy and politics in the European Union, anybody? Oh, that's pretty good. Of course, Sverker must do with the global environmental governance. We have a set of political guidelines which are in draft, but essentially with a new cycle starting on the 1st of November, we're getting very close to them being actual. And one of the elements in that is that we should have a European Green Deal. And that European Green Deal should be created by the middle of February of next year because the European Commission is giving itself 100 days to come with real stuff. One of which is actually a border tax, carbon border tax. I will really want to observe the politics of that. In that European Green Deal, climate is a rather dominant factor, but I think that now alongside it we have a biodiversity component, we have a circular economy component, and we have a zero pollution component. And the zero pollution component is important because it's recognizing after what I regard as quite a long time of perhaps benign neglect, the importance of chemicals in the context of what it is we're trying to manage in a systemic situation. So we have this European Green Deal. It's supposed to come by the middle of February, and that's important policy and politics for this part of the world for the coming 5 years and for the coming 10 years. Because what happens in these 5 years will strongly influence what happened in the subsequent 5 years. Now, in the going back to the history of this morning, the work that we've been doing in the European Environment Agency has first and foremost been influenced by the 2009 paper. Because the 2009 paper, when it came out, caught the attention of policymakers to start thinking about boundaries, limits, tipping points, not just in the climate domain, but in the broader environmental domain. And so if you observe European environment policy, we have a 7th Environmental Action Programme from 2014, which talks about a 2050 vision of living well within the ecological limits of the planet. That didn't fall from the sky, it fell from the Planetary Boundaries work of 2009 and subsequent discussions. When the 2015 2.0 came, then there was a change in the policy cycle, and it was important in almost just in pure time that document came, because it raised the attention of the new policy cyclers to recognize that there was a planetary boundaries concept, because the people in the environmental policy domain were coming from portfolios like trade and growth and so on, so rather far removed from the environment and climate policy domains. And what they brought to what the PB 2.0 brought to their attention was they needed to pay attention. And so that resulted in a project that is called Within the Limits of Our Planet, this one. And it's something that we've been working on, including with the Stockholm Environmental Institute and the PBL from the Netherlands, who will come and speak after me. And essentially what we've been doing is trying to understand what is a safe operating space for the EU. How can one measure that, and does the EU live within it? And what are the policy implications? And the last one is a really complex issue. But we do have the benefit in the European Union of having a rather well-developed policy framework, so we have a chance. We did some work with SEI, as I mentioned. Tina presented it this morning. But that work has really helped us to go to a further step. And Tina mentioned this as well, which is why I wasn't going to present my slides in detail. We ran into a problem, which was if we wanted to discuss equality only as a principle for how it is we understand safe operating space and so on, we were caught by some politics. So we decided to look beyond into the literature about other types of principles, and we worked on these 6. And we've done some work. For political reasons, we haven't done climate change, and we haven't done ocean acidification linked to climate change. There are very good reasons for that, which I can discuss over a coffee, not in this presentation. So instead, what we did was to focus on 4 for which we had data coming from multi-regional input-output analysis to enable us to look at both the production perspective and the consumption perspective in terms of a part of the world which is still the largest trading bloc in the world, and how that influences the rest of the world. So we come with looking at the nitrogen and phosphorus perspectives, the land system change, and the freshwater use. For freshwater, we follow Stefan et al. 2015. For the biogeochemical, we focus on agriculture when it comes to nitrogen, and agriculture and urban wastewater when it comes to phosphorus. And for land system change, we have a broader perspective than the perspective in PB 2.0. And the answer looks like this. And this is something that we're going to publish in the first half of next year. But essentially, where you see the dotted line is where Europe should be in a safe operating space. And here you can see whether it's for land, water, phosphorus, or nitrogen, that largely we're not. The one exception is water. But I say that if you sub-regionalize that between the south and the north of Europe, then you'll have a very different and contrasting answers. So, just to finish, if you're looking forward at how it is we could benefit at the interface between science and policy with more work on the planetary boundaries, then I would have 2 aspects. The first one is it needs further communication about how to understand what the boundaries mean for making policy. It's not there, and that interface aspect is really complicated to achieve, but it is something that we have to realize. The SDGs were mentioned previously about let's not try to go too ambitious with them and so on, but I think looking at the countries, then the countries have one objective when it comes to sustainability, and it is the Agenda 2030 and the SDGs by 2030. So somehow we have to find a way of linking what it is this system perspective is offering to what it is they're trying to do on SDGs. We have to simplify it somehow, and we also have to show that they can arrive at cost-effective and efficient ways of implementing the SDGs, and therefore the interactions between the SDGs becomes an important dimension of that. Thank you.